what have I done? And more importantly, was it really necessary for this thing to have a sequel? Why? Did Mr. Nguyen need more money from the box office? So he basically had to make a cash cow to this thing? Okay. I'm just getting way ahead of myself. So, if you haven't noticed already, this is my review, or more appropriately, rant on Birdemic 2 The Resurrection. Once again, written and directed by James Nguyen, but this time produced by Jeff Gross, with the cinematography done by Bobby Hacker, music done by Michael Gordon Chaparro, edited by Joe Pasquale, and once again, starring the talents of Alan Baugh, Whitney Moore, Patsy Van Ettinger, Stefan Gustafson, and Colton Osborne, and having the newcomers in the forms of Thomas Favaloro, Chelsea Turnbow, Brittany Pierce, Tuan Lu, Aaron Pressburg, Damon Carter, Rick Camp, Eric Swartz, and Carrie Stevens. It's baffling, really. And to think that this thing actually needs a sequel. In fact, I was quite oblivious to this existence. And you know what's also funny? This was also released 3 years after the first Birdemic. Yeah. So, what made Mr. James Nguyen and his crew think it would be a good idea to release a sequel to this very infamous thing? But before I get to that, let's get on to what I thought about the story. And basically, the problem with the story is that it rehashes a lot of plots. Let's see, it rehashes the first plots, but this time with new characters in the forms of Bill, who is a filmmaker, and Gloria, who is an aspiring actress. And look who returns to the scene. We once again have Rod and Natalie. And what's also noticeable is that the other thing that's also rehashed in this film is basically the black entertainer basically singing some type of corny jive, but this time we get a full-on dance number. So it shares loads of problems that the first film has, like unnecessary padding, tension lacking in the whole damn thing, even though it was supposed to be a horror title. And yeah, thank goodness they also have comedy on there, even though I only had a few chuckles. But I will say this film is marginally better than the first one. I repeat, marginally. Not much better than the first one, marginally. Take note of that. Why? Because there were just scenes that basically were a lot more hilarious than the first one, but not so much by a long shot. So overall, obviously I'm not so impressed with the story. And as a sequel, if I were to retitle this film, I'd say more padding, more awkward dialogue, and more unnecessary stupidity rampant. And the cinematography is way below average. It is so appalling to look at. I mean, think of a lot of great horror titles that come into your mind and think of Birdemic. Heck, think of a lot of better horror comedy titles and think of Birdemic. Now you see where I'm getting at? Yeah. Just like the first film, the cinematography and the effects is pretty crummy. And here's one thing that I also would like to add in terms of the story. What is this whole blood rain thing that seems to revive all these creatures? At that point, I didn't really seem to care. So overall, the effects lack any sort of tension or gravity, which definitely should make any great horror film. But in the case of Birdemic 2, It just falls flat, as to be expected. The music is nothing special. Enough said. Characters? What characters? Let's see. We have Bill and Gloria, who are basically carbon copies of Rod and Natalie. Next, the acting, as to be expected, is atrocious, as to be expected. And going back to the characters, despite having some new additions, I did not get invested in these people. I still didn't get any investment with them, nor did I feel anything at all. And what happened to Susan from the first film? It was basically pulled out of the people's ass. Jeepers. But I will say this, at least give credit where credit is due for Patsy Van Ettinger. At least she knows how to liven up the entire shebang. Whereas the main actors, what's so pitiful about these guys is that they're the main actors. They're supposed to carry the entire film. But unfortunately, we have a lot of inconsistencies going on. So overall, forget this thing. And also, herein lies the main problem I have with Birdemic. These two should have functioned much better as short films, not as feature-length films, because honestly, if you cut out all of the filler, all of the awkward moments, and all of the unnecessary crap, then what you're left with essentially is a short film. That's what it is. It's essentially a short film, but the people behind this has basically dragged this film much longer, putting in a lot of padding and a lot of unnecessary moments into this film just to try to pass it off as a feature film. So I can understand that the people behind this are trying their best in terms of the story, but it just all falls flat and could have functioned a little bit better as a short film and nothing more. And with that said, I give Birdemic 2, The Resurrection, as to be expected, 0 out of 5. Just because it's marginally better than the first film, in my opinion, doesn't mean it's any better than what I thought it should be. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune in later for another review in courtesy of Tony Watley II, aka the Black Critic Guy's Puke Cinema. I'm not gonna disclose it right here because I'll have to watch the film for myself and also get involved in his live stream. So until then, good night everybody.